prêt? Et toi, t'es prêt, Michelle?
Oui. Yes.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to, I don't even know what day it is at the festival. The second last day. It's another darkened room, another scintillating conversation. We begin, as usual, by reminding ourselves that this land has been occupied for thousands of years, that it's the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and Petun nations, the Seneca, and most recently the Sassanians of New Credit. We like to note that Toronto remains the home to many Indigenous people from different places, and that this Great Lakes region was the subject of what was called the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Covenant, which is an agreement between the Iroquois and Ojibwe to sort out a peaceable sharing of the resources of this place, and that we're very happy to be able to work in this place and on this territory. So this morning when I woke up, or as I was trying to wake up, I'm not sure I'm awake yet, the first thoughts that were coming to me were, oh, why am I so tired? Why did we put this talk this day? Why do I feel so unprepared? I thought I would have a good long conversation with Doyon and Demers and discuss all their ideas before now. And then I remembered, actually the reason that we scheduled this talk was because I knew I would not have that time. And so unless it was scheduled in as the panel, we would not probably have a chance to have that discussion and to think a little more on the theoretical side. They may contradict me because in a way I think of this as we're starting to look at methodology. They were insistent this is not a talk about methodology, and this isn't a university class on methodology, but I still think when we articulate what we do and why we do it, and when we think about how we want to achieve a certain thing, that is in a way what methodology is. And we come to this place of methodology. It's great that we're exhausted, or I'm exhausted, and I project that onto you. Because I think exhaustion is one of the key reasons to think about methodology. Because it's when we're just doing, we don't need to think about why we're doing or articulate why we're doing. It's when we become exhausted, or when an approach becomes exhausted, that something new needs to happen, or we need to rethink, what am I doing? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? How am I doing it? What is it that I'm trying to get to? Then we're at that stage of wanting to articulate methodology. Or of course, if we've discovered something that we want to pass on to someone else who doesn't know how to do it yet. So I've embraced our exhaustion today. So it's with great pleasure that I have the honor of introducing Hélène Doyon and Jean-Pierre Demers today as one part of our Éminence Grise with Elizabeth Chitty, who of course spoke last weekend. I don't think of them actually, it's interesting that we've selected you as Éminence Grise in a performance art festival, because in a way I don't think of you as performance artists. I think performance art is one thing among many you use, but many of the projects you do would not necessarily fall into performance art in the sense of the presentations you've been doing here. You have many other kind of ways of working, and working relationally with a public or with people. And perhaps you'll get into that in your talk. So I'm not going to give you a long bio about who they are. I think they're perfectly competent to speak for themselves. It's clear that we've invited them. They're respected, honored, and we are very eager to hear what they have to say. So And thank you also to Michelle, who's agreed to help us out when we get into the shit today with the translation between languages.
Hi everyone. Of course, we'd like first to thank Paul Couillard for the invitation, for taking care of us until now, until Sunday morning, I guess, and the entire team of 7A to 11D. I just thought, oh, I would say that because I planned to say the 7 across 11 down, and he told me that's the whole thing. So
it's a history that not anyone knows. So.
Yes, exactly. So as you know, we will struggle with English. So I will read some slides, and Jean-Pierre will interfere with French, and Michelle will help translating. So it might get into some confusion. So we ask you that anytime you interrupt us and you say, well, we're not following. So please help, be helpful with this situation.
Je voudrais préciser que on pourra parler beaucoup de théorie, mais c'est pas notre but. On va parler simplement un petit peu d'indisciplinarité pour placer, pour nous positionner dans notre processus créatif.
So he's saying we can talk a lot about theory, but the idea is just to introduce, to not focus on theory, but to introduce the idea of indisciplinarity, to be able to locate where they place their practice.
En fait, on va présenter plus d'œuvres performatives que de la théorie.
So they'll present more performative projects than actual theory around the idea of indisciplinarity.
Parce que pour nous, la performance n'est pas seulement la performance fluxienne. C'est aussi les œuvres à l'extérieur, dans la ville. Parfois, c'est l'audience qui est le performeur.
Fluxion, c'est ça que tu dis? Oui. So he's saying that performance in their experience is not just limited to the realm of flexion performance. It can happen also outside in public space, and in some cases, the audience is actually the sort of entity that embodies the performance.
Et présentement, je suis en train de voler du temps à Hélène Doyon parce que je parle beaucoup trop.
And now he's stealing time from Hélène Doyon because he speaks way too much.
Anyway.
Now doubled.
Yes.
Twice as
I count that. So,
et c'est certain qu'on ne va pas présenter tous ces œuvres-là que vous voyez. Hein,
he will talk about all of them, but we'll go through.
We're going to synthesize,
So,
sorry, miss.
You understand? Now you understand.
No sex for 1 or 2 weeks.
Now you know exactly where you are, between Doyon and the next. Okay? So,
we are not agreed, you know. We are together, but we are like in the kitchen.
So this undisciplinarity, just to introduce shortly, we started to use this term at the beginning of the 90s, and people thought it was kind of a label, thanks. So we used it to define ourselves as being without fixed discipline and undisciplined. Just these 3 images are to show you that we like to say we work underground, on the main street, and in the air.
Yeah.
But we could also say that we've been doing happening, manœuvre d'immixtion or intrusion, and telematic performance as example.
Just a minute. La première diapo ici, c'est une célébration d'enfouissement d'œuvres d'art.
So the first image on the left is a celebration of enfoncement, burying of art.
En fait, c'est un happening.
It's a happening.
Yeah. Et à l'époque, dans ces années-là, en 1997, oui.
It's in your Eminowski's writing.
Beginning.
So you can consult it.
Yes, yes, it's true. Yeah.
Oui, on s'est créé une compagnie parce que une compagnie d'enfouissement d'œuvres d'art, parce qu'à l'époque, il y avait un retour de la peinture. Et avec le retour de la peinture, en même temps, il y avait un début de l'art numérique.
So what they did is they created a sort of conceptual company or business that would bury artworks, and it's pertinent in a sort of cultural context in that in the 80s there was a movement, a return to painting,
yeah.
And also the introduction of new media practices.
C'est-à-dire, en même temps, il y avait une surproduction de sculptures, de peintures, de gravures.
De grandes installations aussi.
De grandes installations. Et nous, c'est un service qu'on offrait à la communauté artistique.
So at the time there was a sort of overproduction of objects, whether they be sculptural or painterly and large-scale sort of public works. And so they had created this service to offer to the artists in the community the ability to bury the work.
Ouais. À l'époque, nous appelions ça, c'était la bad painting. Alors, on avait de la bad painting and good bad painting.
So at the time they referred to this as bad painting or good bad painting.
Et nous avons décidé de, en français, nous avons décidé de cesser d'opérer la compagnie, l'agence, car on avait trop de demandes d'enfouissement d'œuvres d'art et on ne voulait pas avoir cette étiquette-là dans le front tout le temps. Ah, les enfouisseurs!
They decided to shut down the agency or the company because there was too high of a demand, and they didn't want to become sort of stuck or labeled or identified as the buriers of art.
La première fois que nous avons commencé cette compagnie, c'était au Banff Center, dans le parc national de Banff.
So the first time this project occurred was at the Banff Center in the National Park.
Alors, à Banff, on avait tous les musiciens classiques qui ont participé, qui ont écrit la musique, qui ont écrit les partitions et qui sont venus alentour de la galerie qui est enfouie, jouer du violoncelle, tous les instruments classiques.
So at the band center, they had a number of classically trained musicians who came to accompany them, who stood around the gallery, which was a giant hole in the ground, and wrote music and partitions to accompany the execution of the work.
Dans le dernier enfouissement, nous avons engagé les cadets de l'armée.
So the last burying, they hired the army cadets to accompany musically.
Puis ils ont joué quoi donc? She told me it's correct.
It's enough.
It's enough.
Okay. So our practice focuses on the relationship between art and daily life with respect to notions of such as social aesthetics, heterotopia, and undisciplinarity in the context of cultural democracy and of multiple identification. We propose experiencing the immediacy of the work, notably through performance and participatory environments, in the same manner as the contingency of everyday life in a tensional harmony between the familiar and the unknown.
En fait, nous adhérons à une multitude d'identités, ce qui signifie qu'on n'est plus à l'époque des grands récits créateurs, mais plus des petits récits au jour.
So they don't identify with.
On s'identifie à une multitude d'identités.
So they identify with a multiplicity of identities, and so in that way they sort of divert from this tradition of the singular artistic sort of identity or presence, and rather opt for a sort of identity that can be recreated daily on a daily basis.
And not the grand narrative.
Yeah, so it's breaking from this grand narrative of the singular artist approach or a consistent artistic presence.
So to realize a project, we constantly weave together several types of current and disciplinary knowledge, just as we weave together several different daily interactions. Our experiences in craft, visual arts, and media art, which are both present and absent from our creation process, operate on the same basis as other disciplinary and non-disciplinary skills when they are relevant to certain projects. Just like any individual who in the course of the day has both sympathetic and antipathetic relationship with a multitude of fields of knowledge that are more or less foreign. So we prefer the undisciplinarity because we do not have disciplinary concern, such as to develop a specialization in any or many disciplines. In other words, by developing groups of disciplinary, undisciplinary, artistic, and non-artistic knowledge, we observe at any given moment what is accessible to us in order to select among the stimuli of the environment a distinction that corresponds to our anticipation and elicit a smile of satisfaction, which we call a rictus.
C'est un peu comme la vie se reproduit comme ça, en sélectionnant les choses dans son environnement pour se reproduire.
So life sort of operates that way, by selecting things in its environment, in its immediate environment, to reproduce.
This undisciplinary way of bringing together knowledge to build a unit expressed through a work or even through a text is based on a continuous reformulation of what is self and what is the environment.
De cette manière, si on fait la différence entre qu'est-ce qui est à soi et qu'est-ce qui est aux autres, on réduit la complexité du monde. De cette manière, si
on réduit, on sélectionne et on réduit.
Ouais.
Okay. So in this way,
de cette manière, si on fait la différence entre qu'est-ce qui est à soi et qu'est-ce qui est aux autres, on réduit la complexité du monde.
So in this way, by being able to identify to differentiate what belongs to them and what belongs to other, it becomes a tool or strategy by which to reduce the complexity of the world.
Yeah.
So we call this, of course, self-observation of the constituent operation of our creation process, which contribute to our self-definition as undisciplinary artists. However, where there is self-definition, there must also be the necessary house structure for its reproduction in time. I'm so happy that you can read because my pronunciation is so bad. And with the, yes, thank you. So we can think as a host structure like political structure like cultural democracy, promoting structure like Artists One Center, and host disciplinary structure like the visual and media arts, as we know, that always been good to bring, accueillir les artistes de tout, c'est-à-dire des gens qui travaillaient dans plein d'autres disciplines et qui avaient du mal à se définir, ont toujours été accueillis par les arts visuels. Donc c'est un bon endroit pour les philosophes, les anthropologues et bien d'autres gens pour pouvoir produire dans leur pratique, mais en sentant qu'il y a un milieu pour leur donner une place qu'ils ne pourraient pas avoir dans leur propre discipline. Je ne sais pas si j'étais claire.
So the visual arts is basically has a history or tradition of being a host for a number of other disciplines, often welcoming practices that are being sort of left out of their individual disciplinary frameworks or structures. And so she gives the example, for instance, of philosophers or theoreticians or writers who want to be able to produce creatively but are not finding a support structure within their own disciplinary frameworks. That the visual arts has been and perhaps continues to be a sort of possible space for those people to gravitate and work and produce.
Tout à l'heure, Hélène a mentionné la démocratie culturelle.
So previously, Hélène mentioned cultural democracy.
Souvent, les gens vont mélanger la démocratie culturelle avec la démocratisation de la culture.
So often people will confuse the cultural democracy with the democratization of culture.
La démocratisation de la culture, c'est les spécialistes qui vont choisir les meilleures pièces et les présenter au musée pour les citoyens.
So in the democratization of culture, a number of people at the top will identify the practices or artists to then bring into major institutions to present to the sort of civic audience.
Tandis que la démocratie culturelle, elle a été instaurée après la Deuxième Guerre mondiale, mais ça, c'est pas très important. Mais la démocratie culturelle, elle invite les gens à participer aux activités artistiques. Participer pas seulement en théâtre, mais participer aussi à la pratique. La pratique artistique est démocratique maintenant.
So, cultural democracy, on the other hand, invites citizens of the general public to participate actively in the work and at sometimes produce the work themselves.
La question est, quelle est la présence de l'artiste maintenant dans la société?
Which raises the question as to what is the place and relevance of the artist in today's society.
À cause de la démocratie culturelle.
Because of cultural democracy.
Just to bring some resume of what would be the undisciplinary. So we say our undisciplinarity is organized according to a certain sequence of potential operation that may be composed of waiting, observation, indication, and integration, and sometimes realignment. It's always nice that you can go back and rethink again and start over. With any kind of problem, we just think that's the way we work. So this approach is meant to be an all-fit process. I don't know, I wrote that, I don't know if it's correct.
One size fits all, maybe.
Okay, thank you. Intersubjectivity and interdisciplinarity are stakeholders to this approach. The original intention while developing a project is contextual rather than disciplinary.
En fait, on pourrait dire que notre indisciplinarité fonctionne avec deux types d'opérations. La typicalité ou l'intersubjectivité et l'interdisciplinarité.
So their undisciplinarity operates in two sort of sectors. The first one is with intersubjectivity, and then the second one is with interdisciplinarity.
So it is Jean-Pierre just mentioned the concept of typicality, so it is with this concept that leads us to the core of current thinking, and where the intersubjectivity of daily life is revealed as we live as women and men, among other women and men, under the same influence and working as they do understand others and being understood by them.
En fait, à chaque fois qu'on rencontre un problème, il y a déjà un autre homme, on va dire homme pour femme, qui ont déjà fait quelque chose de similaire. Alors on va au cinéma, on voit comment l'homme vit, on lit des bouquins, on voit aussi dans le bouquin, dans les romans, à tous les jours, on voit qu'est-ce que l'homme construit, et ça c'est déjà des solutions qui sont déjà là.
So every time we encounter a problem, there's always sort of around us someone else, a person who's already encountered that problem. And so this practice of observation, whether it be looking at how people move in public space or in a cinema, or if we read books, these all become tools to access different ways in which people have already addressed a similar or shared problem.
Ça fait qu'on part de ce qui est déjà là, et après ça, on peut le transformer par rapport à l'anticipation.
So we work based on what's already at hand, and we transform it in response to anticipation.
So we have this available knowledge where we can.
Mais attends, je peux plus anticipation en français, c'est comme plus une attente comme expectation. Okay, so it's not anticipation, but more expectation.
Yeah. Okay, just try to go faster on these. This is the definition of interdisciplinarity, because like we said, we need interdisciplinarity to be undisciplinary, and we need also current thinking. Yes.
Des fois, c'est plus simple de penser, c'est pas équivalent, mais on peut dire que pour vous, l'interdisciplinarité, ça peut être comme un langage un peu, qui a un peu les mêmes valeurs que les mathématiques, si on veut, pour la relation entre les savoirs.
So it might help to think of interdisciplinarity perhaps as a framework sort of like math, in that there are systems by which the knowledge is transferred from one discipline to the other.
So the interaction may range from simple communication of ideas to the mutual integration of organizing concept, methodology, procedure, epistemology, terminology, data, and organization of research and education there too. 1972 OCDE, which is Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It's not the arts who coined the term undisciplinarity, but it is the economic system. Interdisciplinarity. What did I say? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. I don't have any mind today, so it's
it's perfect.
Yeah. Buddha, you said Buddha. Okay.
We
use also this definition from the National Academy of Science, the National Academy of Engineering, and the Institute of Medicine. So we like to look around, like not only in the arts, how we would define the interdisciplinarity, because they clearly mention that these modes of research could be by teams or individuals that integrates information, data, technique, tools, perspective, concept, and or theory from two or more disciplines or body of specialized knowledge to advance fundamental of the understanding of or to solve problems whose solutions are beyond the scope of a single disciplinary area of research practice. The one from the Canada Council in 1999, inclusive practice that transcends and integrates different forms of art, which result is outside the framework of established discipline. They were at that time talking of non-disciplinary approach to the arts too.
Donc, pour être clair, notre indisciplinarité, c'est une approche, et l'interdisciplinarité fait partie de l'indisciplinarité comme une opération.
So to be clear, undisciplinarity is a methodology or an approach.
Yeah.
Okay, that can integrate interdisciplinarity as an operation, as a strategy.
So it's a phenomena of organization that is consistent with our participation into interdisciplinary teams, or on one end, or in the other end, consistent with individual creative conduct.
So does it, I'm going to interrupt because you said we could.
Yeah.
It's the good time.
It's not Jean-Pierre alone who can interrupt. So does it mean that in a way we could see genders as different disciplines, and so by joining together that's a kind of interdisciplinarity as well?
All the cultural studies start the anti-discipline research. So some of them are calling it undisciplinary, anti-discipline. Of course, when the problem is not disciplinary, the answer cannot be disciplinary. That's how I think we end up to this. Because we were working at Obscure in the 90s, and the Ministère de la Culture was defining multidisciplinarity for their program. And they asked, not us, but the director of Obscure to define it. And we were there, and they asked us what we think of it. And we said, no, this doesn't work for us. We don't work like that. We're not just trying to put together some discipline. We're working outside the discipline.
Une typicalité.
not straying from what's known as, oh, this is dance.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is medicine. But this is.
It's like you would often see some performance events that would say dance performance, theater performance. Well, then they would put us into intervention.
On sait, tout le monde sait très bien aujourd'hui que dans les sciences, c'est la même affaire. Si quelqu'un me dit « Ah, moi je suis en sciences pures », je me pose des questions, parce qu'aujourd'hui c'est la biochimie, c'est l'ethnomusicalité, c'est la biologie moléculaire.
So we all know today that this is a reality that also is in other places like science, and so if someone says to him, oh, I'm studying pure science, which is maybe just a term we have in French, he questions the accuracy of that statement because today's science practices are not limited to disciplinary approaches. We're not talking more about biochemistry or c'est quoi les autres?
Tu peux choisir.
Okay, I don't know.
Ethnomusicologie.
Ethnomusicology.
Ou biochimie.
Biochimie, yeah.
Moléculaire biologie.
Molecular biology.
L'ADN.
Yeah.
L'ADN. Pour faire l'ADN, c'est la biologie moléculaire.
Yeah, molecular biology. Anyways, these practices.
It's not pure biology, pure
No, it doesn't exist anymore.
Now it's almost impossible because parce que le problème n'est pas disciplinaire.
Because the problem isn't disciplinary. So they're saying the answer isn't disciplinary.
So, we're going through some work
It's finished theory now. So.
Yeah.
That's the theory.
Sorry.
Now we get to the fun.
Sorry about that.
When we met, we were craftsmanship. I could not see a craftsman. So what is craft person, thank you. So we were ceramists actually. So we start as with the craft, but with the art we often use this craftsmanship too. So this is a grand pic de musique that we built in '92, but we use in performance. We brought it to the city
in Montréal.
In front of the Musée d'Art Contemporain, this new setting.
Qu'est-ce que vous voyez ici?
What you see here.
C'est un campement pour motiver les troupes pour traverser la rue et attaquer le musée.
So what this is an encampment to motivate the troops to cross the street and attack the museum.
Bien sûr, nous avons besoin des citoyens volontaires.
Of course, they're seeking volunteer citizens to occupy this role.
Et
so
for 3 nights, we put 3 woodpeckers on the column of the museum for 3 nights.
Les policiers étaient sur place, mais ils nous ont respectés. Parce que ça prend une échelle assez haute pour aller accrocher le pic-bois sur les colonnes du musée.
So the cops were there, but they pretty much respected them because it takes a pretty tall ladder to be able to get to the woodpeckers, which are installed quite high on the columns of the museum.
Le problème, c'était dans le camp activiste, on pourrait dire.
So the problem was actually located in the activist camp.
Parce que on a utilisé un poêle à bois avec du feu.
Because they used a wood stove, basically. So that's where the concern
Pour
was.
nourrir nos...
To feed the troops. The wood stove was there to be able to feed the...
À chaque fois que nous travaillons dans la ville, ce n'est pas les policiers le problème. C'est toujours le chef pompier.
So every time they work in public space, the problem has never been the police. It's always been the fire chief, basically, who tends to have the final word.
Well, he's the one who gave us the permission. Who has the last word on our work. So we got the permission and we installed those woodpeckers.
Not from the museum.
No. We got the permission from the city to have this fire on the terrain vague just beside the museum. And so what happened then is that the museum, they took the woodpecker into their office and they put it into their archive.
Oui, ils ont démanché, ils ont tout emballé dans du barbel et ils ont tout numéroté.
And
So
then
they-
they asked us.
Yeah, they took them down, they took them apart, they properly packaged them, they gave them identification numbers.
And they asked us if we want to give it to them. So,
C'était très, très, très difficile d'aller chercher notre pièce dans le musée et de sortir du musée parce qu'on ne voulait pas, nous, faire ça pour rentrer dans le musée.
So it was very challenging to be able to then get their works back out of the museum because the intention of the project was never to enter the museum.
so we have the bon de sortie that we negotiate to get our piece back. Okay. Here it's more in 2001. That's where we, after the Agence d'enfouissement for work and work of art, we create the socio-esthétician, the socio-esthéticien, and we open a cabinet on the main street of a village, and we invited the hunting widows to come for a meal with us.
Maybe you need to explain hunting widows because
yes.
I was describing it.
See?
I used the term the other day and someone had no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, people who they said whose husbands are such bad hunters they killed each other.
Yes, I know.
Sure.
So hunting widows is an expression used to designate the women who annually are separated from their husband during the period of hunting.
Like golf widows.
Yeah, golf, okay.
Un petit peu avant, j'aimerais dire que oui, on a créé des compagnies, mais avec l'expression du socio-esthéticien, là, on avait créé une profession.
So there is this distinction between, whereas they have already in the past work created companies, here with the label socio-esthetician, it's not just creating a company, it's creating a profession.
C'est plus facile de faire une intervention avec un métier et ne pas être artiste.
So it's easier to do. Yeah, so it's easier to do an intervention when you have a profession that is not one of the artists.
Of course, at one point people know that it's an art project because it's too weird. or they ask us, are we going to stay there for good? And we say it's just for a month, so they understand that. But what made them more aware that it could be art, it's because it's free. They always ask.
Yeah. Now we have to pay. We understand.
So we were there for 1 month during the October, which is the hunting time, and we gather finally 5 women that accept to come to register their meal, but only for them. Like there were no public at all. They just sat there for a supper. We served them, and they auto-record their discussion. We didn't tell them what to talk about. We just told them, well, you are a communauté qui s'ignore, which is the veuve de chasse.
So they are a community that that ignores themselves, and so the idea is to bring them together.
Ils sont pas en association.
They're not associated or gathered in any sort of formal or structured way.
C'est un petit village et les 5 veuves de chasse qui ont participé ont été comme à part des autres veuves de chasse qui n'ont pas participé. C'était comme des qui ont augmenté.
Elles se considèrent comme les vraies veuves de chasse.
So when they hosted this project, the women came and then they built a sort of community amongst themselves, which allowed them to sort of raise a sort of echelon or to generate a different sorts of community. And so the 5 women who participated in this project after their participation then self-identified as authentic or real veuves de chasse.
Et les photos que nous avons, ce sont les seules documentations que nous avons gardées.
And so these photos is the only documentation they kept.
They went on with their recording, so they could meet again and with videotape recorder, which maybe doesn't exist anymore, but they could at the time use VHS and replay it together. But if not, what they have at home is only their voice. They don't hear what the other says.
They have to.
So each person went back home with their individual recording, so they could meet back up and relive the experience and share it, but they had to come together. If not, they're left with the recording of their own personal experience.
Ils placent leur pick-up comme ça, leur camion.
Yeah, you can do a tailgate party.
Mais on ne voulait pas débarquer dans un petit village et prendre leur culture et la mettre dans le musée.
So the intention wasn't to go into this small village, take a part of their culture, and dislocate it into the museum.
It was more that they have an experience together. And in fact, like, we felt very bad. You know, we were scared of how we could manipulate the people, but like we said, we gave them what they use, and after that they were very proud, and there was this publication with those pictures that they authorized us to use, and they were so proud to have this catalog and to have participated into a work of art. At the end they knew it was a work of art.
Il y a eu beaucoup d'anecdotes qu'on pourrait compter comme ça. Je vais en compter seulement qu'une.
So there's a lot of anecdotes that they can talk about in regards to this project, but we'll just pick one.
Il y a une journée, il y a un homme qui est rentré dans notre commerce.
So one day a man came into the commerce.
Et on lui dit, ah, t'as déjà tué? T'as déjà tué,
Yeah.
non?
And so they asked the question, oh, so you've already killed, meaning you've already killed your animal, and so you're back from the hunting trip.
Il sait, oui, mais lorsque je suis revenu à la maison,
Yes, but when I came back home,
j'ai vu mon nom sur toutes les boîtes de carton
I
que
saw
ma femme avait rempli toutes mes affaires dedans.
I found my name on a whole bunch of cardboard boxes that my wife had packed with all of my things, and she had left.
And l'homme,
The man,
c'est ici, c'est pas comme en Gaspésie, très loin au Québec.
here is not like Gaspésie, which is a further place in Quebec.
Il y a les vautours de la ville de Québec qui viennent ici pour baiser nos femmes pendant qu'on est dans le bois.
The Quebec vultures will come into our town when we're away and have sex with our wives while we're hunting. That's what happened.
Et c'est très dur pour un socio-esthéticien de tenir le coup et de dire ah, c'est pas grave, une demi-heure.
So it's very challenging for a socio-esthetician in that context to stay stoic and to engage with the person sympathetically, understanding that they have this other project at play. They were caught.
But can you say, because it's kind of unusual, the way they were recording,
Yes.
and something about that decision.
Mais avec le prochain projet,
Yeah.
on a refait la même chose, mais autrement. Hélène va.
Yes. They use the same technique in another project, which they'll talk about now, so it might explain.
So we call this, it's a trilogy of autocaptation. So in fact, they all record what they see and they move all the time. So it's like, it's not a great movie. It's a recording very...
Well, now we have GoPro. It's kind of
well, that's it.
pre-GoPro.
Well, that was before GoPro. That's it, exactly. So for the next one, which was the third of this autocaptation project, we invite artists. I will ask. I will.
Because captation doesn't cover it. Like it's auto recording.
Yes.
Yeah, self-document. Yeah, auto-documentation or.
So we were looking for citoyens trifluviens ayant au moins un enfant engagé dans une pratique artistique professionnelle ou dans une formation y conduisante.
C'est quoi trifluvien?
De Trois-Rivières.
Oh, okay. So they were just looking for people from this community who had a child, at least one child, who was engaged in a professional artistic practice, or who was currently studying to become an artist.
So it's called Parents d'artistes. And so we got these parents, like we got the Veuve de Chasse,
ils ont tous, il y a beaucoup de personnes qui ont accepté parce qu'ils veulent encourager leurs enfants qui sont aux études pour devenir des artistes.
So a lot of parents wanted to participate in this project because they were enthusiastic about supporting their children in their own approaches to becoming artists by participating in an art project.
Parce qu'ils croient qu'eux sont probablement un peu artistes, si leurs enfants sont artistes.
So there's a part of a belief that they must be in part artists if their children are practicing as artists.
Well, that's what the recording revealed, in fact. At the beginning, they talked of the weather because they don't know each other, they don't know too much what to say. And of course, we serve wine, so we have a nice meal and wine. So weather, then all the cliché about, I didn't want my child to be an artist, or me neither. I told her, you know, she should be infirmière or something because.
La chose, à Trois-Rivières, l'université n'a pas de faculté de médecine.
So in Three Rivers, the university doesn't have a medical medicine faculty.
Parce que c'est important, une université avec une faculté de médecine, parce que les étudiants ou les étudiantes en art peuvent se marier avec un médecin.
And
that was recorded in the discussion.
It's important to have a faculty of medicine in a university because that means there's hope for the children to marry a doctor.
That's what they said. The discussion went around this. So, but then after they start, in fact, like Jean-Pierre said, to reveal that they must be somewhere artists too. And at the end, they were just all artists sitting there and letting their child to go through their dream, what they didn't do. So it was, we asked that time, you know, permission. We told them everything that would be recorded would be presented in the gallery, and they all signed to
they give the permission.
Yeah, to give the permission to the division of the work. So people would go in the gallery and they would sit in the middle of this pentagon setup, video setup. Maybe you can see better. See, it's all vellum paper that are suspended, and so you could be inside the discussion or outside of it.
In the middle of the table.
Yes. So that's it. The trilogy of capture site. We'll go a bit fast just to show you that there were three burial sites, 3 auto-captation and 3 capture sites. So these are the 3. And we'll talk about the last one here, which was in Montreal. So it's called Situation Construite from Demers. And we sat there, like we installed there this grid, this trampoline, which permit us to discuss but being in the middle of the city. And we've been seen from Artec's windows and from the other building around.
C'est un tricotage de fil de fer.
Of metal wires.
Un fil de fer, un lit, la grosseur.
Oh, 1/8 of an inch metal wires. Oh, for use in aviation.
Le tricotage était à tous les 4 pouces. Comme ça, le pied ne passe pas au travers.
Okay. So the weaving was done with 4-inch intervals to make sure that their feet wouldn't fall through the walls.
Et on trouvait, c'était comme une station météo.
It was like a...
Il y avait plein de capteurs.
Okay.
Peut-être Hélène, tu peux le
Yes, yes, and maybe you can read too. Is it too small or you can read? So
it's small.
Okay, so we had these sensor that could take the wind.
La pression.
It's meteorological tools to capture and measure environmental
pression.
Yeah, so we had
air pressure, temperature, wind, speeds.
And because it was at Artex that it was shown, we used the database of Artex and we mixed together the data from the light with the subject, the temperature with geographical code of the database, database, the wind with the artist. So we kind of built data coming from these aléatoires, these random data coming from the weather and
maybe it's pertinent to explain that ArtText, in case people don't know what ArtText is. ArtText is a sort of archive and documentation center in Montreal.
Canadian.
Canadian-wide, yeah, it's located in Montreal. And so they were pairing up these sort of like environmental statistics that were randomly being associated with the database content in the archive.
Alors, notre conversation, elle était retransmise en ligne.
So their conversation was live transmitted online.
Et à tous les 2 ou 3 secondes,
20 secondes.
à tous les 20 secondes, il y avait un courriel qui était automatiquement qui partait parce que sur tous les continents.
Okay.
Parce qu'on voulait envelopper.
With artist data.
Okay, and so every 20 seconds, an email would be sent around the world containing the artist data that was extracted based on the process, and sent out by email.
Et il me répondait.
And people would answer. Email art.
Yes.
C'est email.
Okay. We go through another piece.
Lorsqu'on a commencé à utiliser le fil de fer, on disait il faut absolument de faire une œuvre participative.
So when they started using this material, the metal wires, they immediately thought to themselves, we need to do a participatory work with this.
Parce que le feeling d'être sur un fil de fer à 20-25 pieds en hauteur,
c'est extent.
Because the feeling of being suspended on this wire 25 feet in the air is quite evocative.
Et nous avons créé, ça a pris du temps, nous avons réussi à réunir les conditions nécessaires pour introduire les citoyens volontaires à participer.
So eventually it took some time, but eventually they were able to gather the right conditions to be able to open up the project and invite the willing citizen to participate in the work.
Et lorsqu'on invite les gens ne sont pas invités à venir voir l'art. On se met sur le même pied d'égalité que les autres activités.
So when the public is invited, they're not invited to witness or view art. They're invited really on an equal standing to participate as they would in any other sort of activity.
So this was in the port of Quebec City during the Biennale in 2010, and we got 2 containers, the big one, the highest one, and the longer one, and we took the bottom from the one who's on the top. We took it off, and we took it off to also the top of the one who's underneath.
Et on a mis les fils de fer.
So the woven wires were installed within this sort of large structure. Yeah, so people could walk across it.
Tu rentres, tu sors.
So you go in, you go out.
Si t'es capable.
If you're able.
Si t'as pas trop peur.
If you're not afraid.
Si t'es pas trop peur.
If you can cut yourself.
The thing is that we ask people to be 2 persons together. More it would be maybe too dangerous, so we ask only 2 persons. But because when we use it, we've done it, we had this experience that if I go alone on this grid, nothing much happened. I could stand very carefully and I'm not afraid of anything, I'm in control. But as soon as this Jean-Pierre size man come on it, then I get very, I would fall because it's just moving, it makes me move all the time.
C'était la même chose sur le petit carré 8 par 8, 8 pieds par 8 pieds par 8 pieds.
It's the same experience on the smaller scale work.
So we reproduce this experience, but for people to cross together. And most of the time, one person would be afraid, but the other not. So they would, but just the fact that they are together, they would always bring the others to feel uncomfortable. And maybe you don't see it, but with all those mirrors, you could see like 5 times deep. Like you could see 5, but everywhere. So you have a sense really of everything is
so you use your spatial references, Jean-Pierre just whispered.
Yes, it's infinite, and you move into it, and you have to cross it. So a very challenging experience. Well, of course, you would see those very brave men that would just show us that they're not afraid of everything, but most people would feel very uneasy to cross
Il y a
it.
beaucoup de classes, de personnalités limites qui venaient faire de la thérapie.
There was a lot of categories of like liminal personalities that would come into this space to experience something as a sort of therapy or to sort of transgress something personal.
So that would be it.
Yeah.
Yes. So maybe you have questions.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe.
Does anybody have a burning question to start us off before?
Pardon, c'est pas possible en créole, c'est-à-dire, but what is amazing about your work for me is that it's so hard to find the truth of anything. And I feel like this is a system that, or a non-system that finds that seed, that moment. And it's just amazing to me. It's like the Fibonacci equation, or all this wonderful math that we have now to explain our needs and our whorls of the flower. And it's like you found that you found a version of that in the work that we do, and it's quite awesome. It's quite awe-inspiring.
It's a very nice comment, but I'm not so sure that we find something. I mean, we try, and we take a lot of risk. We make ourselves at risk all the time. So we say that maybe that's what keeps us together, because we always scare the other.
But that the moment of comfort is the end of everything. So
yeah,
that
there's
risk
no comfort
is so important, and it's like wow, and you're risking physical, but all your bodies are risking physical, emotional, social. Like it is all of it and none of it. It's just.
Peut-être parce qu'on est deux.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Just being two, we're out of control. Like our performance, that's what they're talking about. Like we try to prepare this, like you saw at the beginning. We just can't handle to organize. Some people do that, and
Supposed to interrupt to say Hélène never listens.
Yeah, that's it. He never listened either. Like if we had a plan, sometimes we had planned to give our talk, we stopped to do that. We had a plan, we say, okay, you talk about this, and we split everything, and we won't do it. And then we just get so confused. So now we just don't plan it anymore. We say, just go, but we feel very afraid, because we know we are out of control. And today is worse because we're out of control with the language and with the capacity of our mind. So it's very, I don't know. That's how we
C'est la
work.
même chose pour l'écriture. On écrivait en même temps face au même ordinateur. C'était l'enfer.
So they would write the same way, both sitting at the same computer, and it was a nightmare.
Maintenant, il y a un des deux qui commence à écrire et on envoie par email dans la cuisine du salon à la cuisine.
So now when they write, they'll divide it a little bit more, and so one will write at the computer in the kitchen, and then they'll send it by email to the other one who's working in the living room, and then back and forth.
It's the best thing. Ici, on a la biographie, si vous voulez lire.
Maybe just some title. A lot of what we've talked today is in, we just published it, but only in Portuguese, so we cannot distribute it yet, but maybe sometimes we will get this in English.
Vous avez parlé de l'importance du contexte dans votre expérience.
Oui.
Je me demande quels aspects du contexte en général sont les plus intéressants pour vous. Vous avez pensé à considérer certains aspects plus que d'autres?
Pour le contexte, il y a comme
Maybe we should interpret
Yeah,
the question.
Yeah. So the idea or the question is related to context. They work in lots of different contexts, and if I understood properly, the question is are there certain contexts in which you tend to gravitate towards more than others?
Yeah, or we consider it more.
Yeah.
Et la chose qui nous intéresse beaucoup dans le contexte, c'est si nous mettons un crayon dans le coin ici.
So what interests us in context is if, for instance, we put a crayon in the corner there,
Le contexte will be there.
it redirects the context.
Yeah, but more than that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's
You
more
know you
institute.
translate it as English.
Yeah, your metaphor is too
That's a
obscure.
good metaphor. Really start.
No, but at the beginning we were working a lot, the context was a lot the art system. So we were very much into a dialogue with the art system, although outside of it most of the time. But then we start like with the people, like the communauté qui s'ignore. Then we were more into, that's what we call in socius instead of in situ. Because then it was more like what socially is going on and how we can look at this. Like at this that people don't look usually, like hunting widows or the parents d'artistes. Like there's no community of parents d'artistes, but we just imagine that most parents would just say the same that our parents, you know, what is this fucking idiot to do that, you know? Like most parents don't understand why we're there, and so we thought how we can implicate them. So it's more like socially questioned there, beginning the context.
C'est-à-dire qu'il y a plus d'intérêt par les rapports interhumains que par d'autres éléments contextuels.
Well, but
So
with
there's more. Sorry.
Yeah,
There's
but-
more interest in the sort of human interrelational than in a sort of like external structure.
Yeah, but with the hunting widows, then the complete village was implicated into it. Like we had this idea of the hunting widows, which we addressed, but then you are everybody from the village just wondering what is going on. You know, it's like they know this activity doesn't fit in the context. So it does address the context, but you know, as a reverse. Somebody just said, for truth, somebody said, I understand the socio, but no, I understand the
esthétician.
I understand the esthetician,
Like a makeup artist.
Yeah, makeup. But what the fuck with the socio, you know? So it just does address.
Et pour ma métaphore du coin, c'est qu'on peut faire ressortir une communauté. Si on travaille à tel endroit, comme ça, on fait ressortir une communauté, ou on fait ressortir un problème, ou on fait ressortir...
Yeah.
So the metaphor of the crayon is one that tries to articulate this idea that by redirecting something somewhere, that a community will emerge out of that, or even a context maybe will become visible.
Yeah.
It animates the whole space. And why is it that, like, it creates this whole world just doing that? Because what's the...
Oui.
That's what
Mais j'ai remarqué qu'il y a plus de recherches sur les rapports interhumains, disons, aimables.
Aimable?
Aimables, c'est-à-dire...
Usuel.
C'est-à-dire pas conflictuels.
Yeah, usually we don't work with problems. Like we don't want to try to solve problem of the community. We think we're not equipped for that. But we want to raise questions. Like, and one most important is the place of art in a society. When, like in democracy culturelle, where art has no value at all. So posing the problem, not to everybody will get to understand it, but some person around us will just get a better understanding of what could be art.
Yeah, I totally it seemed to be more amicable or man-friendly as opposed to conflictual situation.
OK. Bartel.
Parce qu'il parle français.
Ici, on travaille comme tu dis, là,
Communauté aimable.
les communautés aimables. C'est que pour nous, il y a beaucoup, on voit ça souvent au cinéma, on ne veut pas esthétiser la misère, rendre la misère aimable.
So if, as Bartholomew pointed out, there's this tend to gravitate towards more pleasant human interactions or positive human interactions. And the reason behind this is because unlike sort of a lot of what pop cultural practices are doing, there's no desire to want to actually aestheticize misery. And so the idea is to work with more, and to not address problems as a strategy to avoid aestheticizing misery.
But in the same time, it does raise the problem of the relation between men and women with the hunting widows, really. Because that's really how, like, traditionally, men go to the hunting and women stay home. And so they did talk about how now they appreciate this time of the year because they can do their own thing. But like it was more like a liberating discussion than but that question was raised. Even a man said, "What's the problem with hunting widows? They're fine when we're gone." You know, he thought it was something bizarre that we addressed this. Like.
So, you talk about your practice as undisciplinary, but it seems it always is hosted in an art environment. You didn't show us any hosts of, it's not like you went to a hospital and then they organized.
They asked us to go into hospital. Yes.
And?
We didn't go. Well, we would go, like we've done these hunting widows, we would go if it comes from us. But if somebody asked me to go in a hospital to try to make a peace, I don't want to just,
Parce que nous ne sommes pas des infirmiers sociaux.
They're not social nurses.
But we went into sociology and we talked about the socio-esthetician into à la Sorbonne, le département de sociologie. We present ourselves as socio-esthetician. So we go sometimes out from the art world, do some piece. Of course, you're right. There's not much example here. They all stayed much into the art system, but in the same way, they were very often not seen as art.
Mais tout le monde a compris que nous sommes à la fois disciplinés et autodidactes.
So hopefully people understand that they are both simultaneously disciplined, but also self-taught.
But it seems important to still have this art context.
Well, like I said before, there's no other place where you can work this. Of course, it's not typical to just us now. Everybody, I mean, most artists now work this way. But if you go back 20 years ago, we had to explain this. Nobody would just, they thought we were just very bizarre. We were presented sometimes in some class as atypical artists.
Mais lorsque nous sommes socio-esthéticiens et que nous allons dans la faculté de sociologie, nous ne sommes pas en art.
So when they do embody the socio-esthetician and they go into the sociological contexts and frameworks, they are not read as, it's not art, it's not read as artists, and they're not an artist.
Ils croient que nous sommes des sociologues.
They pass as sociologists.
On aime beaucoup s'intégrer dans des lieux sur une autre identité que l'artiste, que ce soit en sociologie, que ce soit
So when they do go into another disciplinary context, or when they leave the visual arts, they don't do that as artists. They do that as this other entity, so sociologists, socio-estheticians, more specifically.
They said self-taught. So they're self-taught.
Yeah.
That's also another word for that might be research. You're doing your research, like any artist would do the research. That's what you mean.
But even like we teach, and we talk with
teach yourself,
and we always say to the students,
they teach professionally.
Yes. And we say
they have jobs.
But we tell them, you have to be self-taught. We won't teach you how to be an artist. You will have to be self-taught. If you're not that, you won't get there. So it's something that we all have to develop, I think. As you say, it's research. That's what it is.
When I introduced you, I was speaking in terms of methodology because the way you approach talking about your work is to talk about process, to talk about your approach, as opposed to many artists talk about their work in terms of, oh, I'm very concerned with environmental issues.
Yeah, well, that's
I have a burning issue, or you know, I'm looking at the, you know, the space between whatever.
Le processus permet de créer une approche ou une méthodologie pour chaque projet différemment.
So the process allows them to develop a methodology or approach that is specific to each project.
And of course, when we are at university into the methodology class, we will use this language. We just decide not to use it too much in this context because it's, I think we do that to respond to the academy. That's one thing. But when we are, usually as artists, we don't think that way. And it's, I teach methodology on the third grade, on doctorat, and artists, they just don't know what it is. They're so scared of what is methodology. You know, you have to learn what it is, and it's very mystical about it.
It's a very intimidating word.
Yeah, that's it. And sometimes I say, you don't know how simple it is. It's mystical or too simple. You have to decide.
Comme Paul a dit au début, on ne pense pas à la méthodologie ou au processus lorsqu'on fait une création. On ne pense pas.
So, like Paul had evoked, when they're in the process, like when they're creating, they're not thinking about process or methodology. They're creating.
Yeah. We are looking and waiting.
They're waiting.
Waiting for an idea.
Is there something you could say, like your work was about? If someone asked, what is your work about? How would you answer such a question?
It's about the relationship between people.
Yes. Sometimes participation, but not all the time. But of course, yes, it is relationship. Though we didn't want to.
But does that include? I suppose that includes, for example, in the work you present here, it's kind of about the relationship between the two of you more than because you're not.
Because of the context, like I told you, like we didn't want to do a work outside of the premises of performance because then you're out of the group and you have to do your own thing by yourself, and it's difficult to share what. So when we are invited into these events, we rather do a performance, but we still keep this relation, which is very, very important, that become then the motto. But that's also, like I told you, like we were, the first time we've made a performance, we've done a performance, it was because we were invited to. Like we were doing this work outside, and Le Lieu, la rencontre internationale d'art performance de Québec, invite us to do this scene performance, and we just wow, we've never done that. You know, it was very scary, and then we decided we in fact we do performance art like this on scene only when we're asked for. Oui, Tanya.
It seems to me from the little I've seen in the performance you did here that you like to flirt with danger.
Yes.
So would you like, albeit with a sense of humor as well.
Oui.
So you want to talk about that?
La plus grande stimulation pour nous de faire une œuvre d'art, c'est la peur.
So the biggest stimulation or motor when they're creating work is fear.
Et je connais un anthropologue qui disait « J'ai toujours eu peur de jouer au hockey, j'ai eu peur de la rondelle. »
And I knew an anthropologist who said, I've always been scared of playing hockey, I'm scared of the puck.
Je suis devenu un gardien de but.
So I became a goalie.
Et j'ai toujours eu peur de parler en public, et maintenant, il est un orateur.
And I was scared to speak in public, and now he's an orator.
Yeah.
You know?
That's it. I was so scared of being in front of people, you would not believe it. How much sick I was. And I'm still sick before a performance. But that's what we do, because we try to surmonter nos peurs.
To overcome their fears.
Yeah. But danger, but like I said, being out of control.
Yeah.
Like we just can't control everybody. The more you want to control, the less it works. So we try to, of course, we organize a situation where we won't control everything. It's impossible.
But do you worry about the safety of your audience or of your own
Of the audience more than and also of us too, but we think like we'll be out of control, but it cannot be so bad, you know, like we feel that we are secure enough to do it. But very often we had to overcome our fear. Like first time I didn't want to go on the grid, not at all. I said, you're crazy, I'm never going to go there. But at the end you get used, and after 3 pieces we could not go anymore, neither Jean-Pierre and I, we just could not, like then the fear entered.
Mais il y a aussi les pièces que nous faisons à l'extérieur, dans la ville.
So the works in public space in the cities.
Et on doit toujours soumettre un plan d'ingénieur.
We must always, it's required to submit an engineer's plan.
We would want
So somebody is telling us it's okay.
Yeah.
But sometimes even us, we wonder.
Jean-Pierre interrupts to say there is always, however, a little clause at the bottom that avoids a certain responsibility.
But it reminds me of that the name of that Carrie Sheen, up to and including your limits.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Because we're at, we only have 5 minutes left, so if people are satisfied, we can close here. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, thank you so much for tackling.
For being so bad.
Short question.
Yeah.
Please.
How did you find each other?
How we found? You won't believe it.
On est du même village, on est né dans le même village.
So they're born in the same village.
So, but we didn't know when we were a child, and we came back the same weekend from Europe, and we were ceramists.
French accent.
Yes, we were both ceramists, and we just had to talk together, and it stopped there. And we are 23 years now together. It's very funny to find somebody from your village.
Pas loin de Québec. Pas loin de Québec.
At Saint-Raymond, where we've done the Veuve de Champ.